What's up everyone, it's Drew Wilkins with Swine and Bovine Barbecue, and in this video we're going to be cooking two different briskets and using two different methods for checking for tenderness. One using a temperature probe and the other one using our fingers to go by feel. So let's get going. So checking for tenderness on a brisket. It's one of the most important things you can do when cooking a brisket, but as a backyard cook, it's one of the hardest things that I consistently have to do. It's, struggle with it from a confidence perspective. I think I'm overcooking the brisket. Did I get it just right? So I've used the probe method before, and I've used the method of putting your fingers right here in the middle of the flat and see if they can barely break through the surface. I actually learned that at Leroy and Lewis's barbecue university class, and doing that really changed things, because a lot of times you'll hear people say, pull a brisket at 203 degrees. I've never had a brisket tender at 203 degrees. So hopefully with this video, it will shine some light on the different ways to check for tenderness, which one might be best for you, because I know it's still a learning process for me, but I wanted to share some of the things I found in this video. So I'm gonna trim this bad boy up. We'll do it on fast forward. I'll do a separate video down the road where I show you how exactly to trim a brisket, but I'm gonna get this one nice and trimmed up and be right back. All right, so I got both briskets trimmed. Time to season them up. I use a 50-50 mix of kosher salt and 16 mesh black pepper, and then I come over the top with some garlic powder, a little light sprinkle of garlic powder. I find when I mix the garlic powder with the salt and pepper, it either all comes out at first or there's way too much left at the end, and there's no way there's an even application on the brisket. So I like to do them separately. I know some people will mix them up and do them by hand. I suck at getting an even application over a big piece of meat like this by hand. So I use the shaker bottles. So I'm gonna go ahead and season both briskets up. And there we have it. Nice, seasoned, evenly coated brisket. Gonna season the other one. Be right back. So got them seasoned up, put them in the fridge, let them sit in there overnight, uncovered, just like they are now. We'll come back in the morning, fire up the pit, throw them on. All right, it's the following morning. We got the pit fired up. The smoke is rolling, so let's go ahead and put the briskets on. Just gonna put one brisket towards the back right here. And then the other brisket right beside it. So I'm gonna use a blocking log. This thing's gonna be on here unwrapped for probably 9 to 10 hours. And I really want to protect the front of these briskets, so using a blocking log to keep the direct heat from pummeling the point. Right, shut the pit down, check back when it's time to wrap. It's been about 12 hours actually, not the 9 to 10 I anticipated, but these briskets are at about 180 degrees internal, so I'm going to take them off, wrap them up, and we'll put them back on the pit. All right, going with the foil boat method to wrap these briskets, so just lay it down in the middle, curl it up on the sides here. I'm sure a lot of you guys have watched Leroy and Lewis or Trud's Barbecue. They are the innovators or inventors of this method and have made it popular. I love it. Leaves a nice crunchy bark on the brisket. I think it turns out a great product, so I use foil boat pretty much every time I cook brisket now. So that's what I'll be doing for this one. So I'll get the other one wrapped up. We'll put them back on the pit. So we got the briskets back on the pit. The flat is facing the firebox. They're the one that needs the heat right now. The point has had a lot of heat on it so far. So we want the flat to get tender. We'll start checking them for temperature here after a little bit. Once they start getting to that 203 area, we'll check around, see what's probe tender. Once they're both probe tender, we'll start feeling with our finger. If one's not probe tender with our finger, we'll pull it. We'll let the other one go until it is probe tender with our finger. Due to the test that we're running, we'll rest them, put them in the oven overnight, and eat them tomorrow. But I'll be back once they start probing tender. We've got both briskets out. This one is reading 205. This one's reading 203-ish. Both feel really probe tender. I mean, you see this going in easy, right? It's going in, stick it in. So probe tender. Now we're gonna see how they pass the finger test. So we're gonna stick our finger up in the middle of the flat. I'm not able to easily stick my finger into the bottom of this brisket. Let's try this one. I'm not able to do it in this one either. However, they're both feeling probe tender. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna put this one back on the pit, let it go until I'm able to gently push my finger through the bottom of the middle of the flat, where I can just barely slide it in, and we'll do the probe tenderness there. And remember, both of these are tender. This one I'm gonna leave out, let it cool down. It'll do the overnight rest, same thing. This one's gonna go back in until we're able to stick our finger slightly in the brisket, separate the fibers, and then that's when we'll know this one's done. This is the brisket we put back in until we were able to get it to where it was hand tender. So let's see what it's reading on the temperature probe for reference. All right, 210 right there, getting into the flat a little bit. We're about 207, 206. This part of the flat, 209. But what we're looking for is when you pick this up like this, flip it over, we're barely able to stick our finger in between the muscle fibers. Like, not jam your finger all the way through, but barely get your finger to separate between the fibers. And that took 30 extra minutes in the pit versus this when they were both probe tender, right? So what we'll do, this one's almost done resting. We'll put it in the oven. I like to bring them down to about 160 to 140 before I put them back in the oven to rest at 140 degrees overnight. We'll slice into these for lunch tomorrow and we'll see what the difference is. All right, it's the next day. Our briskets have rested overnight, so let's slice into them and see how we did. Up first is the brisket that was probe tender, but not quite finger or push through the fibers tender. So let's take it out of the foil boat here. Looks good. Let's dump a little of this fat and tallow all over it, make it shine. All right, so it looks good. Got a little jiggle to it. Now let's slice into it and see how we did. Go right down the middle between the point and the flat here. So it certainly looks good. Got a lot of moisture in it. But this slice right here is what I want to see. Right where the flat and point meet. That's typically where myself as a backyard cook has issues. So let's slice into this. Nice little bark there. So pretty tender. Feels pretty good. Nice little bark on the top there when I was slicing it. Again, not lacking moisture. So we'll save that slice. A little piece of bark there. Now let's slice down the middle of it. See how we did from or slice some fatty off here. That burn that out of the way. Looks good. All right, so now let's go to the hand tender brisket. Now we've got the brisket that was probe tender at the same time as the other one, but we couldn't put our fingers in between the muscle fibers. So we cooked it. It took 30 more minutes before we could do that. So let's go ahead and take it out. In this one, unfortunately, I think I popped a little bit of a hole in the foil when I was testing it for tenderness with the probe. So it didn't have quite the same moisture to put on it and make it shine like the other one, but that doesn't matter. It's more for looks than it is for flavor or taste. So let's slide into this. Got some nice jiggle to it. Nice flop. Well, same slice. All right, looks good as well. A lot of moisture, good looking brisket. But again, this slice right here is what we care about most for this test. So let's go ahead and slice it. So certainly a little more floppy, a little thick on the slice side. That's just user error on my part. But it's thicker and it's more tender. So it's got more flop, at least, than the other one. Yeah, they both got a decent amount of flop, but this one, the one that we went to finger tenderness, was a little better. So let's check out the fatty side on this one. And again, crunchy bark from the foil boat is hard to beat. You hear it going through, it's just absolutely delicious. If you hadn't tried it, check it out. So there we go. Fatty side looking good on this one as well. Now, let's go to what really matters. How do they taste? What we're gonna do is we're just gonna taste from a tenderness perspective and see which one we like best. So we're gonna start out with the one that we took to probe tenderness, not quite finger tenderness. They both look really good. So first bite here, this is the probe tenderness, not quite finger tenderness. The flavor is really good. There is a little bit more of a bite through. It's not perfectly tender like I've had in the past, like when you go to a really good restaurant, right? What you expect from a in-between slice of brisket, which is my favorite. I know some people love the fatty. I love the in-between where you get a little bit of the fatty, a little bit of the lean, and when it's cooked perfectly, it's incredibly good. This is good, and again, I had a little bit more of a 1/4 inch slice. So ideally you want a 1/4 inch slice for this, so it is a little thicker, but that's gonna make it more realistic for the tenderness, right? You can't hide it with a super paper thin slice. So it's good, really good. I don't think anybody would complain if they were to be served this, unless you're an aficionado, right? I mean, okay, maybe you could have cooked it a little longer to get the tenderness where it needs to be. So gonna finish up this bite, then we'll go into the one that we took to finger tenderness. All right, so now let's take a bite of the finger tenderness slice. So here we go. Again, a little thicker than probably what it should have been cut, but that'll be the telltale, right? Nothing to hide with the paper thin slice. Definitely has more tenderness. The flavor's identical between the two. Again, that's seasoning. That's, you know, we did everything the same outside of when we pulled them. Really good flavor, it's just more tender. And as you saw when we cut into it, both juicy, both good. So don't be afraid to take your briskets beyond, you know, the 203 that you most commonly hear for when people tell you to cook a brisket. Some parts of the finger tenderness brisket were probing at 210 degrees when I took it off last night. Even the probe tenderness brisket was 205, 206, 207 even in the point in some areas. So I think the moral of this is don't get too hung up in the temperatures. Trust the process. Everybody you watch on YouTube that does this for a living tells you to take the brisket to tenderness. Like they say 203 is a guideline, but make sure it's probe tender. Feel with it. Try and make sure it's tender. Don't be scared if your brisket's tipping over that. That's one of the things that I struggled with the most when I was starting out cooking briskets, is worrying about having a Christmas vacation turkey situation where you cut into the thing and it's just a puff of air because you overcooked it and it's so dry. What you're really trying to do with this, from my understanding, is break down the collagen, and that's what makes a brisket juicy. Higher temperatures, it's gonna break down, so don't be scared to continue cooking the brisket. If it reads 203 on your thermometer and it's not quite tender, keep going. The results speak for themselves. So if you like this video type of content, that's what I'm gonna be doing, more from a backyarder's perspective. I don't have any professional experience. I was lucky enough to help Leroy and Lewis out at the Windy City Smokeout this year, but outside of that, everything cooking experience that I have, outside of some classes here and there, again, the New School Barbecue University where I learned this technique with Leroy and Lewis, outside of those two things, I'm just a backyard cook. I like doing it in my free time. My golf game has suffered because of it, but that's what these videos are going to be focused on. From a backyarder's perspective, most of what I've learned has been from reading Franklin Barbecue and watching YouTube. Chud's Barbecue, Mad Scientist, Joe Yim. Those are three of the guys I watch the most. A lot of what you'll see here, I've learned from them, and it's just a guy that does this for fun in his backyard, testing it out and seeing how we do. So come along for the ride. Please like the video if you enjoyed what you saw today. Subscribe if you want to see more of it, and we'll see you guys in the next one. Thanks.